Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start our video with a story about a merchandiser, an overloaded backroom, and some holiday chaos. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like if you enjoy the content, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a juicy story. Stack the pallets 4 high. I used to work as a merchandiser for a national soda company about 10 years ago. One of the biggest problems we had would occur every holiday when stores had serious sales on soda, like getting 4 12-packs for $10. The problem is that there simply isn't enough room in the back room to store enough product on a really busy holiday like the 4th of July. Our sales reps would order way more stuff than we ever had room for, and then it was up to me on how to Tetris it all into the space for us in the back. The way it should be done is to send multiple orders on days like that as space becomes available. But of course, that means sending drivers to stores multiple times, which costs time and gas. I had one store that had a really strict backroom manager with a no-exceptions policy of pallets never being stacked more than 3 high. On this particular 4th of July, we literally had twice as much product as what would fit, so I call my boss and tell him he needs to send a driver to buy back some of the excess load. He tells me to stack the pallets as high as the forklift will allow me to solve the problem. I remind him at this point I'm only allowed to stack 3 high. He tells me, figure it out. I know that the backroom manager will get lava-level mad when he sees this, but it's the boss's orders, so I'm up to 5 high when the manager sees it and goes banshee ape crap on me. I tell him it's my boss's orders. I finish stacking with 1 tower now being 5 high, then start walking out as my shift is now done. The backroom manager tells me if I leave it like that, we can kiss our account with the store goodbye. I leave. I get a call from my boss 30 minutes later that there's a driver on the way to do buyback and I need to go back to the store ASAP. I tell him my shift is done for the day and I've already returned the company truck and I'm on my way home to see some fireworks. It's 8 p.m. at this point. He tells me to turn around and go get it sorted. I tell him the only way I'm going back is if I get double time for the entire day, about 14 hours at that point, plus a 10% raise. He yells at me that it's never going to happen, so I tell him that me returning to the store is never going to happen. I also tell him that if he changes his mind, he can send an email to me agreeing in writing to my terms. I had other side gigs at the time and wasn't concerned at all about this job. I got an email about 30 minutes later from my boss's boss agreeing to those terms. It's immediately followed by a phone call from him apologizing that I'm needed and I need to go back to the store ASAP. My boss's boss also sent my boss, who was already at home, to help sort the mess out. Hearing him apologize to the backroom manager was gold. I'm damn surprised you managed to make that raise stick. I'd have thought they'd scramble to find a replacement pallet stacker and then toss you to the curb. And our second story. My EMT job won't give me my state-provided PTO illness leave when I quit. My EMT job largely hired 18 to 22-year-olds who usually had this as their first ever job. They heavily emphasized that employees who are part-time get no PTO, but kept the state-provided illness PTO heavily under wraps. So the majority of people had zero clue that it could be used at any time you had to call in sick. I'd gotten sick many times during my time working there because it was COVID era, and not once did they breathe about taking paid time off, despite there being an entire process involving HR to take time off for COVID. Granted, yes, they could have assumed I knew or whatever, but trust me when I say this place was predatory when it came to paying us minimum wage as EMTs, and not a single person that even worked there for years knew about it. On my second to last day of my 2-week notice, I discovered that there was an indication of PTO in my file, which we all largely ignored since we were told we don't get any PTO. Here's how the convo went. Me. I noticed that my file states I have unused PTO. I'm confused because we were told we don't receive PTO at all since we're part-time. HR. That's state-mandated PTO for illness. Me. Well, since I haven't used it, will I see it in my last paycheck? HR. No, it's only for illness leave. Me. I got COVID twice working here and had to take 2 weeks off. Can it be used retroactively for that? HR. No, it has to be requested at the same time as when you're taking off. Me. That would have been nice to know when I contacted HR multiple times for sick leave regarding COVID. Weird how no one thought to offer it or ask if I intended on using it. Me. I have 2 shifts left this week that I'm going to work, but can we figure out a way for me to receive the health PTO? HR. That's not possible. You'll also be unable to request a recommendation letter if you call off at all during your 2-week notice due to a lack of professionalism. Me. So in order for me to get that money, I would have had to call in sick and request that I use my medical PTO at the same time? HR. Yes. Me. Okay, so I'm calling to let you know that I have to call off today and tomorrow because I'm not feeling well. I would like to use my PTO. HR. Well, are you really sick? Me. If I am sick, will I get to use my medical PTO? HR. Well, yes, but me. Then yes, I'm sick. I will be using all 16 hours of my PTO health leave. I also want to make sure this is documented as an excused medical absence so I'm not penalized for calling off of shifts during my 2-week notice. Smart. It's unlikely they'd give you a good recommendation if this incident would change their mind about it. And our next story. Elderly man at my local Food Lion. I do the grocery shopping for my family, parents who I live with, mainly because I have the time, but also because I enjoy it. It gets me away from the house, and I'm a bit of an organizational nerd. I enjoy playing grocery Tetris in the cart. I like finding deals. I enjoy clipping coupons. I even have a list of each aisle and what's on it for maximum grocery list planning. So my grocers know me. They recognize me. If they don't see me for a while, they charge up like my favorite auntie, hands on hips. Where have you been? Why haven't you been in to see me? I love my store. So this happened a few years ago, around the first of the pandemic. I stopped in to pick up a few things. I'd written things down a bit out of order because I'd scribbled it while I was at work. I had my store map, though, and was consulting it when I nearly bumped into an older gentleman. When I say older, I don't mean 50s. This guy was closer to 80. He apologized and seemed flustered, so I asked him if he was all right. I'm lost, he said despairingly. I can't find X. I can't remember what he'd been looking for. It might have been sugar or coffee or something simple like that. I glanced at my map to confirm before telling him which aisle. He thanked me and then, completely bereft and almost seemingly to give up, said, My wife used to do the shopping for us 50 years. She's been gone a month and I don't know how to do this. My heart instantly broke. I asked him what else he was looking for. He showed me his list. I accompanied him while we found all the items he'd come looking for and a few others. It wasn't much, the bare essentials for a single man for the week, and we were done in about 15 minutes. As we shopped, we talked. His wife had caught COVID and fought for almost 4 weeks before passing away. I ended up giving him my map, hoping it would help him as he acclimated to this new task. As he headed for the checkout and I prepared to go back to my shopping, I still only had 2 or 3 of my own items in my basket. I heard him say to one of the floor managers, That young lady right over there deserves a raise. And the floor manager smiled at me and said, Oh, I'd love to, but she doesn't work here. The old man looked at me, tears in his eyes, and thanked me. I told him I'd been happy to do it. I still am. It's been 3 years, and I still think about him from time to time, wondering, worrying if he's okay. That was amazing. Thank you for being a kind person. There are so few genuinely kind people in this world. It makes me so happy to read this. And our next story. Neighbor trespassing in Florida. A few years ago, we bought a home on a few acres on a private dirt road in Florida. No HOA or anything of the sort, well-established neighborhood with older residents and a few families mixed in. We never expected that our 87-year-old neighbor would be the source of such a headache, but alas, here we are. Said neighbor lives across the street, not next door. Apparently, the person that owned our home before us didn't mow the grass on our side of the road, so the neighbor in question took to doing it himself. We've now asked him, as the new owners of the property, nicely to stop doing this on at least 5 occasions. He's been very rude to my husband and even demanded why on the last few occasions. From our conversations, he clearly remembers that we are not the old neighbors and even made comments about how a friend of his was a fool not to buy our home before we did. It was only on the market a few days. We do not let the grass get longer than 4 to 5 inches, but that's not the point, as it belongs to us and certainly isn't in a condition to violate any county codes or ordinance or whatever. Recently, my husband caught neighbor on video in our front yard with a saw and some other hand tools cutting through vines and into a 50-plus-year-old pine tree. He claims that it's not our property/tree, despite us having had a property survey done and being full aware of where our line stops, in the middle of the dirt road. Thankfully, because this time it was caught on video, we had the sheriff come out, and he's now received a formal trespass warning from our property. Now he's taken to driving on our grass daily to the point that it's killing it. We put out some logs along the side of the dirt road to deter this behavior, and we believe he moved one of the logs yesterday just to drive on the grass. We're installing security cameras to catch this on video. Update. We called the police on him again, this time presented video evidence, and he was arrested. I hope this was the last time he caused us any inconvenience. Tree law is a very hot topic on Reddit. If he kills your tree, you can charge him to replace it. It's very expensive to replace a 50-year-old tree, sometimes more than the house cost. And our last story. Veteran Grandpa. My grandfather loves Italian wines and old Fiat 500s. He has 2 of them, and they're his pride and joy. He loads them into the bed of his truck and drives them around town, sometimes taking them to the lake to sit in the car that's in the truck bed, look at the water, drink wine or beer, spend the night in the truck, and return home in the morning. Sometimes he even starts them up and drives them himself. Once when he went out, he had a liver attack. It turned out that gallstones were the cause, and my grandfather needed to be hospitalized urgently. Next to him lived a neighbor named Karen. She constantly yelled for him to get rid of those old wrecks, always calling him an old fool, a fart, a moron, and my grandfather would argue back, calling her a dumb bee. I remember as a child, it was my entertainment to hide in the bushes and listen to them scream at each other until they got tired. So once when my grandfather was hospitalized, Karen hired some guys to tow away those 2 Fiats from the carport next to my grandfather's garage. If my grandfather had been home then, I'm sure he would have grabbed his old Garand rifle from the Korean War and shot them all without hesitation. But luckily for Karen, he was lying in the hospital, grumbling after having his gallbladder, which was completely filled with stones, removed. But Karen didn't know that my father's a police officer. They often argued with my grandfather about every little thing. They loved each other. So for my father, it was a matter of honor. He found the Fiats at the nearest junkyard. After threatening the owner with arrest, the junkyard owner immediately ratted out Karen, saying she'd given him $2,000 to take away her husband's junk from the yard. So my father went and arrested Karen for theft. Fortunately, the Fiats were so unwanted that they hadn't even started to dismantle them at the junkyard. LOL. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.